We all like tight ends, pause. But today I'm doing my early 2025 rankings at the tight end position. And we started off in the S tier with Brock Bowers and Trey McBride. When we start talking about Brock Bowers, this dude broke the receptions record for rookies as a tight end. Absolutely incredible for Brock Bowers. And his situation has only gotten better for the Las Vegas Raiders. When we look at the situation, they draft Ashton Jeanty in the first round, helping out that ground and pound attack. But then we see Jonnu Smith also get added into this team, as well as Chip Kelly as the offensive coordinator, and of course, Pete Carroll as the head coach. Which, not to say that I don't think this offense is going to be taking leaps and bounds of steps, but it has to be better. Jonnu Smith is 100% better than Aidan O'Connell that we saw last year. So I'm very excited for Brock Bowers as he was the tight end 3 on a points per game basis. And you add in the fact that my man's only had 5 receiving touchdowns in 2024. Imagine if he were to get, somewhere around 7, 8. We could be talking about Brock Bowers being an even higher level value. Right now on the 4for4 composite site ADP, Brock Bowers is coming, of course, as tight end 1. But he is going off the board as player over 16. So you're going to have to take him in the middle part of your second round. Now, depending on how you like to build out your teams, I understand some of you might not like taking an early level tight end, but I do like Brock Bowers there. If you want access to these amazing tools on the 4for4 website, use code YouTube. That's going to get you 25% off, help you win your fantasy football championship in 2025, draft an absolutely amazing team. And while you're here, you might as well subscribe to the channel because we're going to be helping you guys provide a ton more content as well. Now, the next piece of this S tier is going to be Trey McBride for the Arizona Cardinals. And Trey McBride, same situation when we're talking him and Brock Bowers, where he had a ton of volume last year, a ton of receptions. We would have wished some of those receptions actually went to Marvin Harrison Jr., but he had 111 receptions, 1,100 yards, and only had 2 receiving touchdowns. Put up 15.6 fantasy points per game, was the tight end 2 on a points per game basis, but only had 2 receiving touchdowns. So if we can assume that both Brock Bowers and Trey McBride can upgrade their tight end situation, and especially Trey McBride, we could be talking about him absolutely returning on ADP. And that's the thing that I'm excited for. If you have to take Trey McBride, like I said, he's a little bit cheaper overall right now in the streets. Overall player 22 on the composite, tight end 2. So you have to be excited for Trey McBride. But I will say this. These two are at the top of the tiers. No one else that you really need to be considering at the top 2 tight end spots. Now, move it on into my A tier. And I got 3 main guys. It's going to be George Kittle. It's going to be Sam LaPorta. And it's going to be Travis Kelce. Let's talk about George Kittle for a second. Deebo Samuel went moving out of town. We now have Ricky Pearsall. We got Brandon Ayuk recovering from injury. We got Jawan Jennings. But are we very worried about those pass catchers? Of course, we have CMC in the backfield as well. But George Kittle, as much as he is getting up there in age, he's just been a model of consistency. He's 31 years old, going to be turning 32 this season. But last year, he was the tight end 1 on a points per game basis, tight end 6 the year before that, tight end 2. This dude might be the best overall tight end in the NFL. I know that's crazy to say. For fantasy, it's been the Travis Kelce show, for the last 5 to 6 years. But I think George Kittle, very, very safe pick. Right now, like I said, going off as the tight end 3, but if you look at the overall composite ADP on 4for4, you don't have to take George Kittle as early as those other tight ends. Get him in the 3rd round, which feels a little bit more appropriate, a little bit better value. Maybe you can take your top 2 players, and then George Kittle, which I do like. Now, move on to Sam LaPorta. And the question that has to happen with Sam LaPorta is, after a lesser sophomore season than that first season, can he actually bounce back? And we'll have to see, because tight end 3 is a rookie, 14.1 fantasy points per game. Last year drops down to 10.9, tight end 8. Now, his yards per reception did go up, but he did get less targets and he had less receptions. And we see Ben Johnson leave town. Now, what is this offense going to look like? We're assuming that it's still, the Dan Campbell show. They're still going to be getting Amon-Ra St. Brown. They're still going to be getting Sam LaPorta. But the big piece of last year was specifically seeing Jameson Williams take that next step. And with Jameson Williams taking that next step, we saw Sam LaPorta fall behind just a little bit. And so I think here is kind of where maybe George Kittle should be closer to the A tier than this. But I do have Sam LaPorta here, going to be playing in a very efficient offense. If he can have maybe similar upside to what he had, where he had 10 receiving touchdowns as a rookie. Maybe we get his touchdown numbers back up this season. Make me really excited for Sam LaPorta. Now, last guy in this tier, It's going to be old man Travis Kelce, blank space Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift Travis Kelce. As much as last year was kind of a disappointment from Travis Kelce on a fantasy points per game basis, he was still the tight end 6. It feels like a fall from grace because he was like tight end 1, tight end 1, tight end 2. Like, I understand it wasn't the Travis Kelce that we know and love. And especially after Rashee Rice went out, a lot of people were saying, hey, Travis Kelce needs to step up. It looked like he did lose a step. Maybe he was a little bit heavy weight. I can't judge the man for carrying a little extra weight. He's dating Taylor Swift, for goodness sakes. Like, it is what it is. But I think we need to see him this season. And as much as I want to compare him to a guy like a Tony Gonzalez, who towards the end of his career was definitely still a top 7, top 8 fantasy football tight end, but he wasn't that elite level tight end that he was, in the early, mid 2000s. And so to me, I do want to just take a shot on Travis Kelce here. I understand Rashee Rice is back. I understand Xavier Worthy year 2, but there's just part of me that continues to feel like this Chiefs game plan of they're just going to ground and pound and run the ball is not necessarily what Andy Reid and or Patrick Mahomes want. So if they can start throwing the ball like, back in prime 2021, 2022 territory for Travis Kelce, we could be looking at a resurgence or at least just a very good value. I feel very safe with this value because I feel like his floor is pretty locked and loaded. The question is, how much upside does he continue to have? But as we're kind of talking about this, in this A tier, I feel like tight end 5 is very much appropriate for Travis Kelce. Now, moving on to the B tier, I kind of have a big B tier of guys. Starting off with TJ Hockenson. TJ Hockenson is a guy who I think a lot of people forget just how talented of a tight end he was because mainly he dealt with that major ACL tear. And then last season comes back from that ACL tear, puts up tight end 16 numbers. He did not look like himself. He did not look explosive. The part that we do know, playing with Sam Darnold, that was a new quarterback. He was peppered with targets, that season before from Kirko Chains. But going into this year, JJ McCarthy, I know it's not his rookie season, but going into his first year of actually being a starter, we could be looking at, him wanting to pepper the TJ Hockenson. And I understand competing with targets with Justin Jefferson, with Jordan Addison can be a lot, especially last year in the 10 games played, only had 62 targets. But if he can get back to that, 2022, 2023, where he's getting somewhere around 110 to 130 targets, we're going to be looking at this as such a value for TJ Hockenson that you have to be taking it. And I think he could easily slide in and be a top 4 points per game producer at the tight end position. And you're just getting him here. Like I said, it's hard for me to put him above Travis Kelce in my rankings. And I think there's a little bit more upside for Sam LaPorta, but I think he's kind of still in the same conversation, even though I do have him kind of in this next tier. Now, next guy on my list, it's going to be Evan Engram. And Evan Engram gets a new home this offseason with the Denver Broncos. Sean Payton has said that he is going to be using Evan Engram as his absolute secret cheat code weapon, the Joker. And Evan Engram last year, tight end 12 on a points per game basis in the 9 games that he played. Wasn't great. But let's not forget who Evan Engram has been. He's been the undervalued tight end that is overproduced. Tight end 4, tight end 7 on a points per game basis the last 2 seasons. Now entering an offense where, so there's some people that love themselves some Courtland Sutton. There's some others that love some Marvin Mims. I love myself some Bo Nix and Sean Payton. And I think if they wanted Evan Engram and this was the guy that Sean Payton said was going to take this offense to the next level, then let's go take a shot on Evan Engram in this offense. And when you're able to get an Evan Engram, like I said, right here where I have him as my tight end 7, you absolutely have to love it. Now, when you're looking over on the composite ADP and kind of pulling this back in, you're getting a pretty good value here with Evan Engram. Right now, he's the tight end 9 on composite. So I am 2 spots ahead. I think you could probably wait a little bit. And as somebody that I think this is the year to wait on tight end because there seems to be a little bit of decent depth, that's what I like to do. And we'll talk some more tight end, strategy in later videos. Now, next guy we're going to talk about here, it's going to be Mark Andrews for the Baltimore Ravens. And I understand Isaiah Likely turned into what was like the waiver wire darling of week 1 last season and then kind of let everybody down. And then Mark Andrews, he had an okay year, 11.1 fantasy points per game, tight end 7. It wasn't amazing like Mark Andrews that you were expecting if you were drafting him, but it wasn't also that bad. And so for me, I think going into another year removed, like last season, he had that car wreck. He was also coming off that major injury the year before in his knee, and it didn't look the same. And so I understand he is also going to be turning 30 years old, but I still think there's a little bit more prime in Mark Andrews' career. And the other piece is we didn't see Zay Flowers take that next step. They didn't add any other receiving weapons. A healthy Mark Andrews is good for the Baltimore Ravens. And yes, they are going to focus on running the ball with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. But I do want to be still giving Mark Andrews a chance, because let's not forget, folks, in 2023, tight end 5, tight end 3 in 2022. 2021, he was the tight end 1, tight end 4, tight end 5. So this guy last year was like, honestly, his second worst fantasy football season he's had all year. And so that is me saying we need to be taking shots on Mark Andrews. Also still have him here in the B tier. Last guy in this tier for me, it is going to be Jonnu Smith. And I understand, Caleb, Jonnu Smith got traded. Why do you like yourself some Jonnu Smith? And as much as Mike McDaniel seemingly figured he loved Jonnu Smith more than Tyreek Hill last season, Arthur Smith proved he loved Jonnu Smith more than Kyle Pitts. And listen, I understand we'll maybe talk about Kyle Pitts later in this video, but Jonnu Smith and Arthur Smith have some sort of relationship. I don't know what it is. I'm not trying to dive into it, but what I do know is Aaron Rodgers in town. DK Metcalf is the only other pass catcher there that we have to worry about. I know some people like some Pat Freiermuth there for a little bit. He was a sleeper tight end. No, give me some Jonnu Smith as someone that can be a dominant target catcher. Tight end 5 on a points per game basis last season. Still only 29.9 years old. He's going to be turning 30 this year. I don't care about age with tight ends unless we start creeping up into that like 33 to 34 age range. And we've even seen like Travis Kelce, like some of these guys can absolutely keep playing past that. 111 targets last season. And I'm not saying he's getting that same level target share, but who besides DK Metcalf are worried about in this offense? Sure, you can say they're going to ground and round the game with Jalen, Warren and Caleb Johnson, but DK Metcalf and Jonnu Smith are who's going to be catching the ball. And so if we're considering that, the Pittsburgh Steelers should be they're probably going to be a middle of the pack offense, if not a little bit more bottom, somewhere in that 16 to 18 range efficiency wise. And so I'll take a shot on Jonnu here. Like I said, if I'm missing out on one of those elite level guys, the Brock Bowers or Trey McBride, I mean, what's the different upside between Jonnu Smith and TJ Hockenson in all reality? I don't think it's a ton. And so I still have him here, feel very appropriate as we then move into the C tier. And when we move on to the C tier, first guy we're going to be talking about, it's going to be David Njoku for the Cleveland Browns. And as I'm recording this, the news of Quinshad Judkins and that unfortunate piece of him being arrested is happening. So what's going to happen? We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. We assume it's going to be Joe Flacco. How is that going to impact Jared Judy? How is that going to impact David Njoku? I don't know, but David Njoku, tight end 8, tight end 7, tight end 4 on points per game basis the last 3 seasons. This guy's returned on value and more. Maybe I'm too low on David Njoku, because David Njoku is kind of who we hoped Kyle Pitts would turn into, just a guy of consistency, of super athletic tight end that has touchdown upside. Maybe I'm too low. And I think as I'm making these rankings and as I'm talking and we've been making these rankings, I'm realizing that the tight end landscape, we always say it's deeper than we think, and a lot of years that doesn't turn out to be the case. It's usually just the top end guys. There's maybe 2 or 3 difference makers. But I think if you wait on tight end this year, there's enough shots that you can be having to be able to come through on the back end. Next guy in this tier, it's going to be Tyler Warren. And I understand putting a rookie tight end here, it is risky. Putting any rookie in your rankings is risky, but mainly on the tight end landscape because it's not the wide receiver position. At the wide receiver position, we have seen multiple first-year wide receivers absolutely crush it. Whereas when we're talking this tight end landscape, I mean, there's been like 2 guys over the last, 3 or 4 years that have absolutely crushed it. We got Sam LaPorta, we have Brock Bowers, and then we had that 1 season of Kyle Pitts. Like that has been it relatively when we're talking like elite level tight end production. So banking on a guy like a Tyler Warren, who I loved as a prospect coming out of Penn State, lands on an Indianapolis Colts team that is pretty much needing some number 1 wide receiver. A lot of people are hyping up Josh Downs. A lot of people still like some Michael Pittman Jr. I understand we're excited that Anthony Richardson isn't necessarily going to be a part of this. It's going to be the Daniel Jones show. But I guess you got to just take a shot on a guy like a Tyler Warren who was drafted with a top 15 pick. I like him. He's less competition than another guy drafted like a Colston Loveland, who we'll talk about in a bit. But I think you got to take a shot on Tyler Warren. If you're at this point, you've waited so long on tight end, and you just take a shot on a guy like a Tyler Warren, it could either do 2 things for you. It could give you super high level production where Tyler Warren all of a sudden becomes a top 3, top 4 points per game producer at the tight end position, or he's going to be like all the other tight ends where it takes him a little bit to develop, and you'll probably just need to double up if you do take a Tyler Warren in your overall draft. But do have him here in this tier. Next guy is going to be Tucker Kraft. And as much as I think this is my favorite target, if I'm being honest, I think this is where I have him. This is where my projections have him, but I have been a Tucker Kraft stan personally. Tight end 14 on a points per game basis. This team, besides Matthew Golden, I don't, and you can't even bank on Matthew Golden because we haven't seen him perform. But I mean, they've been divulged of a number one. Same thing with the Colts. And so not that I think Tucker Kraft necessarily is the answer to that, but I have heard, and we've heard Matt LaFleur say, hey, Tucker Kraft needs to get involved more. Because I think that was the big takeaway of last year is like you're watching Tucker Kraft play and you're like, man, this is a mini George Kittle. And we didn't see him consistently get the volume that he needed to put up fantasy football points. But I do think right here in the rankings, I feel very comfortable taking Tucker Kraft. Now, kind of moving on into the next tier, it is going to be the start of Colston Loveland, who gets top 10 draft capital to the Bears. And you're probably gonna be like, well, Caleb, I prefer Colston Loveland, who's the better receiving tight end, versus, Tyler Warren. And I would agree with that as a rookie. The thing that makes me worried about with the Chicago Bears is not only are we banking on Caleb Williams taking that next step, but then he's having to compete with targets with DJ Moore, Luther Burden, Romo Dunze, got DeAndre Swift in the backfield. You still have Cole Kmet. I understand Colston Loveland could be a generational type tight end prospect. I mean, him and Tyler Warren could come in and be, mini Brock Bowers. I hear that. But I think setting that expectation is absolutely unrealistic. But if you get to this point in the draft and all those top guys are off the board and you can take a shot on a guy like a Colston Loveland, you absolutely have to do it. And when we take a look back on this multi-site composite ADP, he's right now going off the board as tight end 13. I have Colston Loveland right there with tight end 13. So we got to feel very good about lining up with that. But I still feel like I prefer the guys ahead, but he does have the talent of the guys in the tier ahead of him. So we'll go from there. Now, we are going to go through my top 22 rankings. And next guy on this list is going to be Dalton Kincaid. The only reason I have Dalton Kincaid is the flashes that he showed as a rookie, knowing he's also playing in a super great offense. The Buffalo Bills are going to be a great offense. Now, what happened to him last season? He just didn't get the opportunities that we were hoping for, 75 targets, and he didn't take and make those opportunities to what we thought. Now, the year before, like I said, he got 16, 17 more catches, had almost 200 more yards. So averaged about 2 more fantasy points per game. But I mean, up to this point in his career, he was a tight end 14, tight end 18 on a points per game basis. He might just be the new age Dawson Knox. And I think we boosted him up after that rookie season. Really excited. He got that first round draft capital. Maybe he takes that third year leap. Like I said, the tight end position, usually they enter their prime, year 27. Year 28 takes them a little bit longer than these wide receivers. And so I do want to still be conscientious of that, but we do have to kind of put that into consideration here with our tight end 14. At tight end 15, we're going to have Jake Ferguson. And besides the fact that he just got engaged to one of the Cavender twins on TikTok, Mr. Jake Ferguson is entering an interesting spot where the Dallas Cowboys are definitely going to be airing out the ball. They add in George Pickens, which not only is that going to be helping CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott, but that's also going to be opening up the field for Jake Ferguson over the middle. I think this is probably a good spot if you drafting the tight end 2 to really be taking them. And I typically recommend most people just take a tight end 1. Like these next few guys, there's going to be guys that kind of break out that you don't need to be wasting a roster spot week 1 on. But if somehow you waited super long, Jake Ferguson is my tight end 15. At tight end 16, it's going to be Dallas Goedert. And Dallas Goedert, talented tight end, playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. He just is the third in the pecking order. It's hard for him to really get the volume, to really get the touchdowns that we need. But tight end 10, tight end 12, and tight end 5 on a points per game basis very quietly over the last 3 seasons. So I'm having him here because I think a lot of people we talk Saquon Barkley, we talk A.J. Brown, we talk Devontae Smith, but we don't really mention Dallas Goedert's name. So the fact that I have him as tight end 16, even though the last 3 seasons he's outproduced that tight end ranking, probably feels a little bit criminal. I just think there's that case of who can actually take it to the next level here. At tight end 17, I do have Isaiah Likely for the Baltimore Ravens. And maybe this is the year that Isaiah Likely takes over for Mark Andrews. We thought it was happening last year, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, when game 1 happened and this guy put up 26.1 fantasy points, it was like, oh, Isaiah Likely's here. Dude looked like prime Kyle Pitts out there week 1. And then absolutely fell off until about week 5. And then just kept showing glimmers of hope, like week 13, week 16, where he got in double-digit fantasy points, but then he just kept putting up single. And I think part of that was just the offense wasn't as good as what we were hoping for passing attack-wise for the Baltimore Ravens. Don't get me wrong. Lamar Jackson was absolutely electric, but he was spreading the rock around. There was not a distinct, Mark Andrews killing it, Isaiah Likely killing it, Zay Flowers killing it. Like, it was kind of all by committee. And so I think it's going to be hard for Isaiah Likely to absolutely hit his ceiling with a healthy Mark Andrews. But we've seen Mark Andrews not be super healthy before, but I need him. I have him on too many teams and I have too many exposures to him. I don't need Mark Andrews getting, injured. But I do think this is kind of the value wise of where I would have Isaiah Likely as tight end 17. At tight end 18, I will talk about our favorite man. It's going to be Kyle Pitts. And Kyle Pitts is somebody that I need us to take a second and say, what the heck is happening? Because he is still the third best receiving option on the Atlanta Falcons, in my personal opinion, behind Drake London, behind Bijan Robinson. Darnell Mooney absolutely emerged last season, but maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe the flash that we saw in 2021 when we saw him getting over 1,000 yards, maybe that's just who he is. Maybe he's just a guy that's going to be getting a 600, receiving yards, falling somewhere in tight end 15 to tight end 20 landscape. And that's definitely in range of outcomes. And I know there's some people that just can't get off the train. And I was somebody that was on the train heavy. I'm now off the train. I think this is an appropriate value at tight end 18. At tight end 19, I do have Pat Freiermuth. Right here in this range, it's hard because we've seen the upside of Pat Freiermuth, but then we saw Jonnu Smith get added to the offense. And then tight end 20, I do have Hunter Henry, who Henry has secretly always just kind of been Mr. Reliable at the tight end position. And Drake May needs weapons. And last year, tight end 15 on points per game basis the last 2 seasons. They add Stephon Diggs, but this offense was playing from behind a lot, and they were having to throw the ball. And I think they're going to have to continue to throw the ball. I mean, Hunter Henry had 98 targets last season. I think he'll probably end up somewhere 90. If that efficiency can go up a little bit, I think it could really be hyping up Hunter Henry and seeing a little bit more where he's going.